I'm here to talk about Backstage plugin development. So I just want to know how much context you all have. Anyone of you here have ever heard about Backstage? Cool. That's like very few. So anyone of you in your company uses developer portal, or you have any front end that is developer specific? Every day morning you go and you log in? Yeah? Okay, cool. So let's start with the talk today. A short introduction about me. I work as a software engineer at Harness. Previously, I have been actively contributing to Kubernetes project 3 times as part of the release team, and I was active a year back in SecContribX. So yeah, that's all about me. So yeah, before we start, this talk is more centered about Backstage plugins development. Now we need to understand what Harness is so that you get a context why in the first place we needed to build our own Backstage plugins. So what does Harness does is we are a software delivery platform. Our work is to make code delivery easier for engineers, make it reliable, secure through our tools we have like continuous integration, delivery, CCM, and all the products that a developer needs in a day-to-day life. What is Backstage? So it's kind of a trending project these days because people are talking a lot about developer portal, and Backstage was created at Spotify, was donated to Cloud Native Computing Foundation as a sandbox project in the year 2020. So basically, it's an open platform for building developer portals. So how many of you here know about developer portals before? Okay, that's quite less number. So I'll tell you what I think about developer portals and what developer portals are. So basically, the first line, it says one front end to your entire infrastructure. So these days in our companies, there are a lot of toolings that have come up. Like you use a tool, then you hit a roadblock, you use another tool, like tool for a tool for a tool. There's endless tools. And then we are at an era where you use microservices. There's a lot of services for a single deployment, and like a single app might contain numerous microservices. So what is the major challenge here in a day-to-day life for us is having all the information at one place. Maybe you could build your own UI and pull all the information and put it in one place, but what is unique about developer portals is it makes sense of everything to you. Like you know who is the owner of this thing that is present. Like it might be anything, your APIs, your docs, your microservices, anything, and the state of it, and where the individual components are running, and who is using it, or who is the owner. Like it might be the case that you might be using a service and you have a dependency on another service. You never know. That might be an orphan software lying at some corners. So the work of developer portals is to make things easier for you, is to make things easier for developers, to give them the information that they require, exact information, without going to the multiple tools that you use. So yeah, it helps you to focus on what you do the best, write code, build features, without moving around multiple tools. So how does Backstage does it? So Backstage essentially have something called a service catalog. The service catalog, which I think I have a good image. Yeah. So if you look here, these are some are services, some are libraries, some are website, etc., and you could see the life cycle. Some are experimental, some are in production, and you could see a clear understanding of who owns that. And these are all like you could click and you could get a more descriptive information about it. So you get a single pane glass view of all the systems you have, starting from toolings to services and everything. And what is important to understand here, this is just an aggregator platform. Suppose, let's say, I have a tool, let's say I am using Google Cloud for my clusters. I have certain information I can aggregate on my Backstage or the developer portal, but if I want to play around with it, or if I want to do some advanced, or just going through the logs, you could do it in Backstage. But we don't duplicate and replicate what you could do in the platform itself. You want advanced features, you go to the platform, I'll show it how you do it. You go to the platform and do it on your own. But for now, this is how a Backstage catalog looks like. All the components could be the types that have been shown, and description and everything. So let's move ahead. And yeah, how does this information comes from? This information are fed through a service YAML, or you could say a catalog, service catalog, which is in YAML, which lies in your code base, and then it is harvested into this Backstage. Basically, Backstage, we'll see what Backstage actually is, what the tech spec is. So yeah, and when I say you have information about your toolings, now the tools are provided by some third-party vendors, and you use those tools or get information from those tools using the plugins, and there is a plugins marketplace. Believe me, these are all open source plugins, and you could use these plugins. These are basically NPM packages. See what plugins are, especially the talk is based around that. But yeah, there's something called backstage.io/plugins. You will find numerous hundreds of plugins given by various companies for their product that are developer-centric. So yeah, as I was talking, like, there is a tool for a tool, and everyone is looking towards developer efficiency now. And being a company, since our products are more developer-centric and it's make work easier for developers, so many of our customers came to us and said, like, we are using something called Backstage. So at the first, we were like, what is this? Let's just dive into it. And then once we got to know about it, we know now multiple large companies like United Airlines, multiple banks, Netflix, they have already adopted Backstage, and they are using it as a developer portal. And the real challenge that came to us was, does our company want to build a developer portal? Do we first need to have a developer portal for our own? Or let's harness the value of developer portals. So one thing we realized deep diving is that developer portal is always unique. It will be unique for individual developers within the same team as well. Your engineering manager's developer portal won't look same as an individual contributor's developer portal. Also, according to Gartner research, I think this has been cited at a lot of places, like 75% orgs will have developer portals by 2025. So yeah, it's a rising thing. And yeah, let's understand. So within a company, there are two personas. Let's think like we have developers and we have platform engineering or the SRE or DevOps teams, which are essentially the providers or the people who build the Backstage or maintain the Backstage for you. And your developers, they just use the Backstage. So what is the benefit here it comes? So I'll give you an example. Now, let's say in my company, I want to create a play cluster. I go to Jira, raise a SecOps ticket, assign to my manager will approve it. Then there is a manual steps that SecOps people will follow to create the cluster according to the engineering best practices and standards of my company. So that is all manual grunt work. You have something called templates in Backstage that can do the work for you. So meantime, platform engineering team could help enhance that process, could make more software templates where you don't have to go and raise a Jira every time you want to create a basic cluster. You just go and, it's like software templates in Backstage is just like, I could say Google form. You put some credentials and voila, you have your services, you have your basic softwares. We'll see how it works. So yeah, this is how typically your team looks like inside Backstage. You see, there is ownership of what services you own, what APIs, website systems, the team is members, and this is a basic view, very basic. You could add and you could customize how it looks. You could add more functionality to it, but this is how a basic thing looks. And yeah, there is a company-wide, your infrastructure ownership, and like Backstage is at the head. Team may be someone owns Backstage, someone owns box office. So it's like you, in the end, these are all clickable parameters. You click it and you get the details on what is happening on that. Okay, so we talked about the functionality of developer portals. Now the question comes around, this thing can be done in any app. You could build your own app. You could build your own system. Why Backstage? So I think we're past this question. It's been 3 years for Backstage in CNCF ecosystem, and now it has been widely adopted. So first and foremost, it's open source. And each of the features that Backstage provides you, even the core components or the core features of Backstage comes as plugins, which you could go, change, and use according to your use case. And it being open source, if there is tomorrow a paradigm shift in how we use developer portals, it will first happen here, then in any other developer portals. Okay. So of all the features that we saw some of the features we talked about a lot, and what majority of what Backstage does is, it helps you to create, which I talked about through software templates, like align to your engineering best practices. That is very important for your managers to ensure that you are following, your team is following that. And manage all the system in a centralized location, which you saw in the software catalog, and explore, yeah. So there is an interesting read that came around regarding Backstage. When Spotify started adopting, they made a metrics for any new joiner in the team to make a PR, like 10 PRs, they took the metrics. Earlier, it used to take them 60 days. With Backstage, once they started adopting Backstage, with every docs, API systems in place, it took them around, the time was around 15 days to 30 days. So that is what an advantage you get when your everything is explorable and you know where what is placed. Okay, so let's talk about the plugins. As you see here, it's the extensible part. The architecture of plugin is built so that it make it easy for you to develop and contribute to a develop portal. I'll say like it is so easy to start with developing a plugin. It's a single line CLI command. Yarn create new plugin name. It will create a basic plugin for you and you add your functionalities in that. That's how easy for you to develop a plugin. Then it's cloud agnostic and vendor neutral, like this Kubernetes plugin, which Spotify rolled out with the initial release of Backstage, is you can use with any cloud vendor. Okay, so much of talk, let's see how Backstage looks like. Okay, so this is typically how a Backstage system would look like. So you could see, I'm in my home. It's a Backstage catalog. You have all the components or the service. These are the service, like you could see, playback order is a service. And you have all the CI/CD tools, API dependency, docs, to-dos, and the relation. This is what I was talking about, the ownership. You have, owned by, part of, and then when you go to docs, you have the docs mentioned here, which pulls directly from your repository. I think docs, this came as a core feature, and it has a caveat that your docs has to be in mkdocs format to pull and place it in Backstage. And then APIs, for APIs as well, you could see you have overview, definition, and for new joiners, as I was saying, how do you explore? Let's say there are two teams. Team A is artist. I want to explore the team. I go, explore the team. I can view the source from where it is coming from. And then I could then go back and view their text docs, the engagement portal they have, and see, these are the components that the team own has these resources, and these are, as I said, these are all clickable components. You could have the basic things working here. And this is the diagram that, the ownership diagram you get. So let's come to a real life, let's say this is a Backstage instance that is running inside Harness, and like we use it, some teams use this. And you could see these are the basic tools that you use every day, Jira, PagerDuty, and your GitHub pull request, the ownership of the pull request that you have. And this is a GitHub Actions plugin. Since we internally use Harness CI/CD, so this is an open source project. We use GitHub Actions. And you could see, and one thing, if you mark here, see, what I wanted to show is this. So if I want to understand the details of it, I have to click and go to the platform itself. That is not replicated here. We don't do the duplication work. And let's say in CI/CD, what does a developer needs to know? Where is this pipeline running? What is the time taken? Whether it's a success or failure? And if it's a failure, even the logs, we are trying to bring it here in this platform. And you could go and rerun or run a pipeline. Obviously, it will fail because I don't have the access to trigger this pipeline. But yeah, if I want to read about the logs now, it will direct me to the platform where it comes from. And yeah, so I'm not logged in. It will ask me to log in. Cool. So yeah, that is what I wanted to show. Like any advanced features, anything that I want to set up this pipeline, which is essentially done by my SRE teams, I need to go and to the platform itself rather than doing it here. And then one important part of it, when I reload it, every time you will see, your plugins get loaded instantly. There is no saving. You don't need any DB to save your this plugin data. It gets immediately fetched through the APIs. And that is how even the best practices for Backstage works. Like you are not required to store any data related to plugins. And also, there is something called composability system in Backstage, which is like, let's say my CI/CD plugin is working, but my feature flag plugin is crashing. It has some code issues. It doesn't affect my usage of other plugins or other features inside Backstage. So this is a very strong feature they've developed initially with the architecture that nothing is dependent and everything has their own clear-cut boundary in how you use it. Then let's say, yeah, I was telling about template. So this is very interesting. So see, I wanted to create a Node.js template. Let's name it as demo template. Next step is to choose a location. It is github.com. Owner, I'll be my owner. And let's name it test backstage KCD. Next step is, it will ask me whether I want to create it here. Let's see. What it will do is create a Node.js app for me and push the code. And just it's taking a bit time. I think net is slow. But yeah, okay. So it is there. Now, if I want, I can go to the repository and check. So yeah, it has created this. So basically, without this, essentially what Teams does is there is templates which you fork and create a new repo. And sometimes the best practices are not followed in that. And you see, this is an initial commit that happened now. I have the basic files. And inside Backstage, when I open in catalog, it gives me all the dependency there and whatever I want to have it there. So yeah, this is kind of how Backstage looks like. And let's talk about this. So what is essentially a plugin? So plugin, we talked so much about the functionality of plugin, but at the end of the day, what is a plugin, how it is built? Basically, plugins are NPM packages. If you go to npmjs.com and just search at the Backstage, you will see all these things. So these are a bunch of JavaScript and TypeScript code dumped in terms of NPM packages, which you could pull and use for your usage. And you don't need it, you remove it, and it's just a pluggable thing, front end and back end plugins. And as I said, core features are plugin too. So it's you see it, like sometimes you can have your private packages as well, which many company does. Like many companies have very sophisticated plugins for their internal use cases, and they don't necessarily make it open source, but they can have it in the private registry and pull it and use it. Okay, then yeah. Okay, so basically the plugin which we saw of all the plugins, the CI/CD plugin I showed you, the software catalog is itself a plugin. These three comes under the standalone, service-based, and third-party plugins. So standalone plugin is something that is hard-coded in your code base, like the Tekrada plugin. Let me show you what does the Tekrada plugin do. It's basically, it's in the demo part only, Tekrada plugin. So you see this, this is something, this is hard-coded, your company's information of infrastructure. And then we have something called service-based plugins. So service-based plugins is, again, you have everything in-house, but you have to pull it from an external source, like software catalog that retrieves entities from a database where it saves information about your services, and that comes from Backstage backend service. So you could say like it makes an API request to a service within the organization, not outside the organization. And when we go outside the organization, it uses something called proxy. So the Harness CI/CD plugin or let's say the Jira plugin, everything uses a proxy to make an API call outside Harness platform. So this proxy is basically to help you with the course. Otherwise, it will give you a course error without this proxy. And this proxy server does the work for you and fetches the information from the platform, the external platform, and it displays. So these are the basic three types of plugins. And this is all the sophisticated plugins, no matter what it does, it falls under these three categories, and it does this work like this. So yeah, I was talking about this composability system. Plugins would have clear boundaries, connections, isolate classes within a plugin, but it should necessarily allow the navigation. And plugins to be loaded only when needed, and plugins to provide extension point for other plugins to build upon. So these are, why it is very important, it's very developer friendly to begin with. Especially, I like the point to isolate classes within a plugin. Something is not working, it's not working for that part. Other part, it will work fine. So yeah. We built two plugins. We built plugins for feature flags, product of ours, and we built plugins for CI/CD. We learned something which are very interesting. And so, yeah, as I said, plugin development, when you start, is just a single CLI command. And then it's very easy. Even I know the shortest time we took was 6 hours by one of a single developer to build a plugin himself. But how does it add value? This is where the challenge comes. So you build a plugin, you say that you could pull these features and you could aggregate it in your UI, but then one team comes and say, no, we don't need this information, we need the other information. So how do you build it? Either you could be a product god that you are at the sweet spot for everyone, or you give all the features and you give a lot of dynamicism to your developers, and then you steadily improve. So we took the second part. We gave a lot of dynamicism, like today you can rerun the pipeline, you could edit pipelines But that is becoming, the plugins becomes heavy in pursuit of that. But then again, we have to look into what value we add for developers. Otherwise, your developer won't touch your Backstage instance. They won't come. They are happy with their tools. And yeah, if you don't add value to your plugins, then yeah, it was a very big challenge for us when we started. And then when I said it's all API calls, if you see the code base, any plugin code base, they are making a bunch of API calls. So we discovered a lot of, I'll be very honest, few bugs reported by our team related to APIs were not even discovered by our customers, and we discovered earlier, because this is the first time we tested the performance outside of Harness in a very complex, like earlier people use Terraform to provision pipeline in Harness, but those are very minimalistic use, we would say, compared to the way we have used inside the plugins, and multiple API calls and how much time we take and all these things. This has really helped, and this has been a say for many of the people, like most companies that use Backstage in very random ways, like if you see the VMware Tanzu platform, the Tanzu application platform GUI is based on Backstage. So, companies use it in a various ways, and they discover what they lack internally in terms of toolings and everything. It truly comes out when you develop this plugins. So yeah, we have been developing these plugins in open source. So if you don't use Harness, doesn't mean it doesn't give you value. Last time I was giving a talk, I heard people that, okay, we were able to build front-end plugins. With back-end plugins, we are having some issues. So you could go through this code base of ours and see how we have built, what is the architecture of our plugins, and you could follow the best practices there, or you could just fork it and build your own plugins out of that. So yeah, this is the link to the repo. Essentially the open source repo we have for the plugins. You could go to this, and yeah, I'm available in the hallway to take any questions or any extensive demo you want with a Backstage. Yeah, I could give it to you. So thank you, that's all.
So the first question I have was, is this a static thing or as a living portal? Because let's say you have a lot of dynamically changing services out there in your company. How do you actually keep this up to date with your existing changes? So that was my first question, especially if your company is a startup and there are lots of services being churned out or getting created every day and a lot of tools getting replaced. How do you ensure that this stays in sync with the actual living tools? That was first thing. And second question was, does this have RBAC? And how do we integrate this with the third-party tools? Let's say someone wants to a new team wants to actually deploy some AWS resource using Terraform, right? How does this work?
Okay. So first question, you see these YAMLs? These are catalog YAMLs. For all the information that we were displayed, let me show you the demo catalog that I used today. So you could see this is what it took for the software catalog to load, and this is the metadata or the YAML I was talking about. No, you see Jira, we need the project key, there is a project slug, the tech docs reference that I was loading, and the service ID and integration key for PagerDuty to load. But with integration key, you cannot access my PagerDuty. There is a API key, and there is something called app config YAML inside Backstage, where that is also a YAML basically, where you need to essentially, when I talked about proxy, you need to set up the parameters for your proxy server to work. And the source of truth for what you want to view for your portal and how do you want to maintain, it's this YAML. And when you told I talked about templates. So let me wait a minute. Okay. So you see these templates, like create a Django service. So you could build similar templates to create an AWS cluster, or create a trigger for your Terraform pipeline to run. Here, basically, you need to name, let's do it. Do this internal history, yes. And see, the infrastructure details, you have GCP, database, you have a drop down for everything. You select the drop down, and then, let me do it, yeah. Select Redis and Python linter and owner of the service, since I'm a guest here. So that's the owner. Next step, it gives you metadata, and once you press create, it will create it for you. So it will fail now because I don't have the VPN access to our system. It is basically using our pipeline orchestrator inside Harness. So I cannot, okay, let's see, let's go. Yeah, this is an undefined pipeline that will come in our platform. So yeah, I just created a Django service which is a pipeline orchestrator inside our platform. So this is how you do it. And there is something called template YAML. If you go to the plugins code base as well, we have some of the templates. This Django template code lies there. So you could see that is also the source of truth is YAML. Basically, you need to maintain the metadata in the YAML, and let's say you have a service A, and your service A information is fed through an YAML. It's your team's work to maintain that YAML every day, so that it's updated with the information. So that's how to do it. I think I answered both of your questions. If you have more, then we can talk.